So 3 weeks and two album release dates later, Kanye's Donda is still not here. And we're all patiently waiting for it, but Kanye fans are probably used to the fact that Kanye usually does not drop on the first or even sometimes second date that he gives us. So today we're going to be talking to you guys about how late every Kanye West album has been. And there's only been a few that have actually been on time. So it's kind of classic Kanye fashion to not be on time with the release dates, right?
Absolutely. And listen, guys, leave your expectations for when you think Donda's going to come out. You know, we've been covering a lot of Donda content on the channel because it's one of the biggest topics in the industry right now. A lot of people are wondering where this album is going to be. And not only that, but if you want exclusive content from NFR, you could hit our Patreon link in the description, and everything's going to be there to view.
Yeah, and we just did our top 5 features and top 5 tracks from Donda on our latest Patreon video, so check that out if you haven't already. But, you know, speaking about the situation right now, it's interesting because it's kind of always been part of Kanye's resume, let's say, but people are so surprised when he doesn't end up dropping, and he fooled me too with his Donda rollout. So let's actually go album by album and talk about how late each album has been. So let's start off with the College Dropout, which was actually 193 days late. So this is interesting because it kind of was out of Kanye's hands because this album actually leaked online a couple of months before the release date.
Yeah, this was supposed to drop in October of 2003, but then was pushed to January of 2004 and then made its way to February of 2004. And then, you know, the thing is that I guess that was the kind of the reason why the 193 days lasted so long, but people obviously ended up getting the whole rollout at a certain point and ended up getting the College Dropout. But do you think that at any point that Kanye's fans get frustrated with him for not dropping these albums, or do you think at this point like Kanye fans have gotten used to the whole fact that he's not dropping?
Well, I feel like it always depends on the situation. With the College Dropout, I mean, you can't blame him because the album got leaked and he had to rework a lot of the tracks. I know he added a lot of drums to a lot of songs. He added in certain verses. So at the end of the day, he's trying to give us the best product possible. And like 10 years from now, we're not necessarily going to remember Donda for the days that it was supposed to come out and didn't come out. We're going to remember it for the music, if the music, you know, will stand the test of time like it has for the College Dropout. But moving on to Late Registration now, that was actually 49 days late. And this is interesting because, this is the first time that it was actually, Kanye who gave us a date along with Def Jam and didn't actually deliver on it because he wanted to perfect the album. And we did get one of his strongest albums yet, so could you even be mad at this?
Yeah, I know. This was supposed to come out on July 12th of 2005, and then it got moved to August 16th, and then later, Def Jam actually moved it to August 30th, making it 49 days as a whole. And, I mean, if you take time to perfect your albums, there is a valid reason for you to have to push these back. I mean, there's so much that goes into the process of creating a piece of work. I mean, there's the mixing and mastering to it. You know, there's probably sample clearances that probably have to be done last minute by the record label. There's probably added verses and added features. So, you know, from a fan standpoint, do you appreciate it when the artist takes time and really goes back maybe to the album, pushes the date to give us a better and more polished product?
100%. I mean, all the greats have done it where they've taken, let's say, 3 to 4 years to craft one of their best works, and we've seen it time and time again. But I think the issue that Kanye fans have with the way that Kanye, rolls out these albums is the fact that, he gives us that date initially. Like most artists will, either announce a date and drop on it, or at least,
tease it,
give a month and then try to drop during that month, even though it doesn't always happen. But with Kanye, he's giving an exact date because I think he just gets too excited. He wants the music out. He wants the world to experience it, but he's just not ready most of the time. But let's now move on to Graduation, which came out in 2007 and actually came out a week early. So we have to give Kanye his credit because he's not always late with Graduation. He was early. And it's funny because he has a bar on Stronger where he says, like, you should be honored by my lateness. So do you feel like it's kind of instilled in the Kanye, fans' mind that, at the end of the day, who gives a fuck how late I am?
Well, it's a question of being fashionably late. I feel as if that's the question at hand.
Because it creates more conversation, right?
Not only does it create more conversation, but it creates more anticipation towards the album, and fans are really hungry for it. I mean, look at Donda. Like, people are going crazy for this album, and they're sticking to it. Like, I want this album right now, and I'm gonna wait for it until it drops. But the case with Graduation was cool because this was a big moment in history for hip hop. I mean, this was when Kanye West took graduation and wanted to go head to head with 50 Cent's Curtis for a sort of first week sale battle back in 2007, if my memory serves me correct. And listen, it ended up outselling Curtis. It did 951,000 copies first week. I believe it's Kanye's most commercially successful album first week too.
For first week sales,
So
it is. Yeah,
it ended up helping him. He pushed it forward. I guess I could put it like that.
He pushed the album date forward,
Yeah,
and
so-
it ended up working out because it gave us one of the most memorable sales battles ever. And honestly, I wish we got more of that because it kind of creates that sense of competition between the artists. And now in 2021 in hip hop, it's kind of fading away. And there were talks of the Kanye and Drake thing happening with Donda and Certified Lover Boy, but it seems like Drake wants his own moment and to really not have to have that conflicting thing. Not only that, but there's also rumors that, Drake actually has a Kanye feature on Certified Lover Boy. So the whole head-to-head thing probably won't happen, but it would have been pretty cool to see, man.
Absolutely. But let's move on to 808s and Heartbreak back in 2008. And this came out a day early, and it's actually because of Thanksgiving. So Kanye realized that, hey, maybe it might not be the smartest idea to drop this on the weekend, and ended up putting it a day early. So do we see that in hip hop often where like an artist will just say, like, here, fuck it, take a day early? And,
No, but
and end up going
imagine
with
how
it?
dope that is. Like, you're
Yeah.
anticipating this album coming out on a specific day, and it's like, out of nowhere, a whole 24 hours beforehand, the album just drops, and it ends up being one of the most influential records of the 2010s.
Yeah, and this was at a
the
time.
2000s, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. But this was at a time where, like, if you think about it, albums were dropping on Tuesdays. I'm not sure if
I
you
know.
remember that, but like back in like the early 2000s decade, and like even a couple of albums in the 2010s, albums were really dropping on those Tuesdays, and it wasn't always like the religious Friday 12
Exactly.
a.m. Eastern time. The album's out and ready to
Do you
play.
think that
No.
could happen with Donda, that it comes out on a Tuesday? I think it's possible.
You think it's
I think
possible?
whenever it's literally ready, whenever he has it crafted to the way that, suits Kanye's vision, he's going to drop. It could be a Monday, a Wednesday, a Friday, doesn't matter when. I think when it is perfectly constructed, he'll give it to us, man.
Let's move on to The Life of Pablo, and this is probably one of the longest waits as a Kanye fan that I've had to wait for an album. And it wasn't because it was The Life of Pablo, it was just we had gotten so many different titles for the name of the album, and it took almost 531 days for this album to come out. Nearly almost, I believe that's almost like 2.5 years for an album to come out. Maybe
Something along, well, no, it's a bit less than
year
2
and a half,
years.
a year and like 3/4.
But yeah,
almost.
because this, in 2014, this album of Life of Pablo was supposed to be called So Help Me God. But, that was kind of an older version of the album. And then it kind of, changed into Waves and Swish and then became The Life of Pablo. And what's interesting about this is that this is when we kind of had the beginning of Kanye's mentality of let me have these album listening parties. And on February 11th, he was at Madison Square Garden for the Yeezy 3 fashion show. And he previewed, a version of the album. And I think it was supposed to come out either that day or the day after. But Chance the Rapper had told Kanye, like, look, I want to finish working on Waves because apparently there was something wrong with the song and they hadn't finished it in time for the release. So Chance the Rapper convinced Kanye to push it back to February 14th, which is when it got its title release. But what's interesting about this album is that it got, changes as we went on. We got, as soon as the album came out, it's not like it was set in stone. He kept updating it all the way up until June of 2016 when he added St. Pablo as the outro track. So we saw changes when it went from title to all streaming services and even months after that. So do you think that Donda should kind of have a similar fate where it's released, but the music evolves with us? Because we're seeing that people like Mike Dean have asked fans, like, do you want the OG Hurricane or the blend Hurricane with the Weeknd and Lil Baby? So do you think it'd be a good idea for Kanye to do this?
I think it would, because the fans are always down for these changes that would make the listening experience better for them. Because going back to the Mike Dean point, asking the fans what version of Hurricane you want is a genius move, because not only are you now creating anticipation for that single alone, but you're showing that you want to do fan service for the fans and that they're listening and that there's an actual purpose to all this waiting. Because we're sitting at the time of this recording, Donda has not come out, and we're kind of like all sitting ducks here. Like, what's going to happen? Is it going to come out in a week? Is it going to come out in a month? Or is it coming out next year? But regardless, it's just cool because now artists really want to know, what do the fans want? And in my opinion, that's the best route you could go by, because this is my sort of theory with Kanye, is that he took these 2 listening parties to really understand the fan reception and understand all of the material. Well, we'll call them 3 listening
Yeah,
parties
'cause the
because the
Las
Las Vegas
Vegas,
one.
yeah.
But sorry, I was focusing on the 2 Atlanta ones. But as a whole, I feel as if Kanye has really marinated within this rollout and has thought like to himself, what could I put that's going to best suit this track list, and how are the fans going to receive it? So do you like that now he's taking that extra time to really upgrade the craft and maybe listen to what the fans want?
I do like it, but I'm kind of confused by it because like he's already exposed his fans and the world to this unfinished body of work. You know what I mean? We've got
Yeah.
2 versions of it. So like at that point, you know, people are listening to it online anyways through streams, through, you know, leaks or whatever it is. So why not actually put out the album and do what you did with The Life of Pablo, where you kind of create changes as you go and just do what speaks the most true to the rollout, which is having the music evolve with the fans. So I hope that he ends up doing that, but it seems right now like he'll end up dropping Hurricane as a single and then drop the album when it's finally ready, but we'll have to see what happens. But speaking on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Yeezus, and Ye, those albums actually came out on time, so we're not going to be covering those. But let's talk about Jesus is King, man. So we got 2 listening parties for this as well. So how did you feel about that?
It was all with the Sunday service choir. Like, you know, that was what was previewed. And then Kim Kardashian went on Twitter and was, you know, kind of teasing up the album and the hype of it. And, you know, people thought that this was going to be coming out in August because that was when the first rumblings happened. Then there was more rumoring around September. And then that's kind of like when they gave us this first date. It was in September on the 27th.
So it was 28 days late total. So.
Yeah, and it ended up coming out in October on the 25th. And they ended up staying true to that release date. So since that's the closest album to Donda, do you feel as if that's going to be the same formula for this new album that's coming out in 2021?
That would make sense. I mean, I think we're already, like 3 weeks deep into the first Donda date that we got, which was July 23rd. So now we're August 9th at the time of this recording. So yeah, we're going to be sitting on 4 weeks coming this Friday. So maybe the pattern will continue and it'll be another month wait. But speaking on Donda, if you really think about it, it has been 381 days late because it was first supposed to come out on July 24th of 2020. We had a whole different album cover. We had a track list with some songs that are appearing on this new track list. But, I mean, people think that it's only really been a month in the waiting, but fans have been waiting over a year for this. And do you think that it'll truly live up to the hype based on what you've heard at the parties?
I think people have too high of expectations because you go in with all of these different narratives in your mind that you've already created for yourself before even hearing the final version of the album. You know, you're expecting certain features, you're expecting certain tracks, and you don't necessarily know what's going to make that final cut. So it creates this pre-anticipation that kind of ruins the listening experience because you're like, oh, I wanted to hear that version.
True.
I wanted that. I wanted this feature. I wanted that song, and then you don't get it and you're left disappointed. But that maybe takes away from the overall listening experience because maybe what you're getting is even better than what you had heard before. Because think about it, you know, people probably only had a couple of times, well, most people, because, you know, the MP4 version had gotten reconverted to MP3. People have it on streaming services now because you could add it to iTunes from like downloaded files online. But for the most part, a lot of people have only listened to this album a couple of times and it's unfinished version. So now you're going into this final version and you're going to be like, whoa, this is completely different than what I had heard. So maybe that's where, you know, expectation becomes the killer of joy.
Yeah,
but how about you? What do you feel?
People already have their preferences, man. That's the issue. Like, even myself included, like, that first version I had heard of Pure Souls where Kanye was kind of at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and that snippet came out. There was, like, no drums on that beat, and then he added the drums for the second listening party in Atlanta, and I'm like, that first production just was sweeter. It felt, you know, it felt more down to earth and it felt more like a genuine Kanye verse because it wasn't as triumphant of a production. So people are bound to have their preferences. But at the end of the day, I mean, I just think that fans will continue to be pissed off because, of course, with the July 23rd date, we had Beats and we had Def Jam that confirmed that date, but of course it never came out. Then with the August 6th, Kanye himself posted on his Instagram a picture of the loading screen, and that had said August 5th. But of course, I mean, that was probably in reference to the actual listening party. So at this point, I mean, I've said this before, it would not surprise me if this album gets scrapped. I feel like it's all about the experience for Kanye, and he already got to share this music with the world 3 times. So does he need to do it officially through an album? I don't know.
So I was going to ask you that question because you kind of answered it already for me, but go into detail about this. How would you feel, just as a theory, if Kanye completely scraps this whole rollout and you're never going to be able to hear Donda, that final version?
It would be ballsy of Kanye, and I would accept it, and I would accept it as kind of an artistic statement of being like, this music maybe isn't meant to be heard for decades and decades. Maybe it's just a part of this moment that I needed to share with the world and kind of have some of my favorite artists experience it with me and, expose it to the world. So how would you feel about that?
As a Kanye fan, I would accept it because I already have a great discography full of great music and great material. So I would be disappointed because obviously I want to hear the final version. I want to hear what would have came out. But at the end of the day, the rollout itself almost feels like the album is already out because how many videos has NFR done already just on listening parties, new tracks that have came out, new rumblings? Like, this has been an experience for everyone. And what's cool about this too is I feel as if it's also revived the hip hop game right now because COVID took a massive hit on the whole music industry, and we saw for a while like people were kind of like reluctant to drop their albums and their singles, and people we had gotten a couple of major rollouts, but I feel as if Kanye kind of opened up the floodgates for everyone right now. There's so much attention on the hip hop game right now, and
he also silenced it because nobody wants to be dropping right now because everyone knows that all the focus is on Donda. No one's really caring too much about anything else.
Yeah, but wait till this kind of boils over. Like people are
artists are gonna drop.
People are gonna be very
people have been wanting to drop, but this Donda release kind of halted it for everybody. So last question I have for you is: do you think Donda's coming out? And give me a date if you think that it will.
Okay, so we do this. I don't know how many times we've done this on the podcast already. But
we're gonna do it again.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
It's a new week. Yeah,
it's a new week, guys. So maybe new optimism. But let's say it does drop on that Friday. We have a couple of options. We have the 20th and the 27th of August. So
you don't think it's coming
September?
This week?
No, I don't think it's coming this week. I think he's gonna wait on it. Maybe the 20th or the 27th.
I think Hurricane with the Weeknd Lil Baby drops the 13th, so this week. And then the album drops the 27th.
The 27th?
That's what I'm going to go with, which is kind of the same date that I'm eyeing for Certified Lover Boy. So I don't know, man.
But it's an exciting time to be a hip-hop fan because you're always left guessing and we're low-key always wrong. So it allows us to keep going and, have this anticipation. So I think that's what's so amusing about all of this is being able to be in the moment, being able to buy into the hype, and being able to create our own expectations for the album and then maybe get let down when the actual album gets released.
Hopefully not, man. I mean, I can't take it anymore. But like I said, if this is what Kanye's plan is to just give us that experience at the listening parties and no album, then I'll just have to accept it as a Kanye fan. You know
Absolutely.
What I mean?
So listen, guys, thank you so much for watching through this whole video with us. It's always a pleasure, and thank you for sticking through this whole Donda rollout with us because, us as Kanye fans, we've been just as patient as you guys have been for this final album, and we're going to keep updating you guys with everything, and of course, we will be dropping our review and reaction to Kanye's 10th studio album, Donda, when it does come out. Who knows at this point, guys? So thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for watching the video. It's always a pleasure doing content for you guys. Listen, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel because we're doing album reviews, and we actually have our series called Everything We Know, where we take you guys through the whole album rollout of the hottest releases of the year. Not only that, guys, but our Patreon plan is now live. You guys can access that in the bio. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.